now. All right, take it away, Josh.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, once again, I am Joshua Schenk. I am a forecaster here at WFO Guam. See, I've been in Guam for just over a year now. I first arrived in Guam January 4th of 2021, which was my official start date. Quarantined in the hotel here in Guam for about 2 weeks, so didn't get into the office until about the 16th of January. So that was a lot of fun, just filling out all this paperwork that you need to do when you enter the weather service, the mandatory training and stuff like that. But yeah, so just a quick overview of what I normally do. So for the weather service, especially for pathways, there's kind of two routes most offices take. One is that they try to integrate you into the actual shift schedule, at least just give you a taste of the duties that are involved, whether it's forecasting or running the HMT desk where you launch the weather balloon, take observations, and then take over social media and stuff like that. Or how the office here in Guam likes to do is we tend to try to find more of a project for you to work on, rather if it's more research oriented, or at least trying to work on products that might benefit the office operationally. So yeah, that's the two main focuses that, just to get out of the way, that most pathways kind of takes. It's rather operational or more project based. Yeah, at any time, if you have any questions, any particular questions about the National Service, let me know. That way I can help tailor this talk to what you guys are actually wanting to know instead of just me just talking about my job overall. But when I first arrived in Guam, since we do upper air here, do the radiosondes, that's what about the first 3 months of my training was, just learning how to take upper air measurements, how to properly fill up the balloon using hydrogen, and then how to correctly quality control the flight, making sure there's no extreme lapse rates. Sometimes GPS cuts out and you get weird wind data that happens once in a while, and just showing you how you can QC the products. And then after you're certified in upper air, Guam likes to move you on to the forecaster desk. So in Guam, we kind of do have more of an all office approach where we don't have a aviation desk or a marine desk. We are all comprehensive. We have the lead forecaster and the journeyman work together, and they just split the duties among them. And it's up to everyone just to communicate to figure out who's doing what. At the moment, we do have the only two main desks are our Micronesia and Marianas desk, but those are not really official desks per se. I thought I heard some talking, so I was just wondering. I'm not making sure I'm not missing a question or anything.
No, I think that was Robbie actually joining in. I think you're all right.
Okay.
Any questions thus far in person?
I was going to say one thing because I know that there's a couple of people in the. Oh, sorry, if you can't hear me.
Oh, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Obviously, I know there's a couple of people on the shift that are currently in measurements and everything, and if they haven't got into it yet, I know quality assurance tests and everything are play into that class and everything, and you kind of just hit on that a little bit. So I was wondering if you could just maybe talk a little bit more about it, the importance of it and everything, because I know that a couple of them are going to see it later on in the semester if they haven't already.
Yeah. So for me personally, the main quality control that I do is just with the radiosonde, with the upper air measurements. That's because those are important for being ingested into the models during our 0Z and 12Z. So those are the most important. Usually we just use the computer for that. It has software that allows you to select portions of the skewed T, and you can choose to omit data or try to smooth it depending on what the problem is. Also, I've only done it a couple of times, but when we go on our co-op runs and we actually go to the automated rain gauges or the weight buckets, because they're not tipping rain buckets. They are big containers to just collect rain and weigh it. And you have to empty them at least about, depends on how much rain you get, but at least once a month, just to make sure it doesn't get too full. You have to also check the battery as well, because if you don't get enough voltage from the battery, the weighing system doesn't properly calibrate when you boot it back up. And so those are problems as well. So yeah, proper, making sure proper power supply are going to your instruments, careful calibration using the weights that come in our little set to test the scales and make sure the bias or offsets are inputted into the rain gauges, just so you can have accurate measurements, at least on a climatological standpoint, because since these are automated and some of them don't communicate with the satellite, they are only measured once a month officially by when we go to do our checks. If you want to make sure that you're accurately collecting monthly rainfall totals, QCing is very important, especially here on Guam, which is an island. And then we have Guam's unique also because we also forecast for other nations as well. We have a compact with the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of Palau, and the Republic of Majuro, or the Marshall Islands, I should say. Majuro is the main island, but yeah, Republic of the Marshall Islands. So we cover a large domain. Our area of responsibility is about the size of the continental United States when you just think about how far spread we are. But you got to remember, we are forecasting for just these very small islands, and we usually just pick the main island where the capital is located as our forecast point. Part of that's going to change as we're about to get grids for Micronesia. And so in the Weather Service, when you do most of your forecasting, you use grids. You input Tinchibur, precip chances, cloud cover into grids for 1 hour, 12 hours, 6 hours. And that creates your forecast. That helps format your products like the ZFP, which is the zone forecast, or the coastal waters forecast and stuff. But, and so those grids also get sent off to headquarters or NCIF and stuff like NDC. And those were what populate the website when you go and click on when you go to the main page, like you click on a forecast point and it brings up the 7-day forecast. That all comes from the grids. So Micronesia is not under grids. They're still doing the old way where you just manually type up the text product every time you want to forecast for them. And it's, but once we go to grids, GFE will help format our products and we'll just do minor edits as well.
Let me just quickly interject here. So to cut in for some of y'all, because I know we had a few people join in while you were talking, Josh. What we're doing is we're having Josh go over his duties of the Weather Service and kind of what Pathways was and is. I will be talking about my Pathways experience and sort of resume help, and then Nolan will wrap things up and he will do interview prep. So that's kind of order of operations we're going in for those who are just joining. Are there any questions in person or Zoom about what Josh has done thus far? Anyone curious about how things work or anything like that? No? Yes, no, maybe so. I think we're all right for right now, Josh.
Okay, so I just kind of covered most of the duties, the typical duties of a forecaster. And then in the Weather Service, everyone's basically assigned a focal point. These are specialized programs that you take charge of and are supposed to do during your kind of your downtime or during your flex hours when you're not focused on forecasting. So for example, I am a co-focal point on the website. I am charged of making sure our website's up to date at all times, adding links, creating new pages. And sometimes Bruce can show you a couple of the pages that he helped create as well, just by doing his Pathways project, if he hasn't already. But I'm also a assistant focal point for the radar. Guam does have a radar. It's the only radar in our area of responsibility that is owned by the NASA Weather Service. There is one in Kwajalein, which is in the Marshall Islands, But that's US Air Force, I believe, is who completely owns that one. And we only access it through a website portal. But the Guam radar has been having a lot of issues in the past couple of years, just because since we're so remote, there's a times where it takes a while for a replacement part to come in, but also the Air Force is the one that actually maintains it. And they have a very quick rotation with the people who maintain it. So you got these 18-year-olds coming in who are brand new that are quickly trained to be on the radar. And as soon as they start to get pretty good at it, they are moved to their next tour of duty, where that may be. And so the radar is actually up and running now. The ROC, the team that's in Norman, that the radar control center or operations center, I should say, that it's just up the street from you guys, actually came out and did a whole rehaul on our radar. And I think the next team that's supposed to replace the pedestal and help correct the tower will come out in March. And so we're finally getting our radar up to 100% operational again.
Guam doesn't have radar. That's fake. That's fake, Josh. I don't believe it.
What have I even seen at work all this time? It's been working just
I
fine.
don't know.
It's been purring like a kitten
Any
until
other
it overheats
questions?
itself. Oh yeah, I saw someone mention satellite. We are not underneath the GOES satellite. We are underneath Japan's Himawari satellites.
Is there a reason for that other than just like geography? Because y'all are closer to it?
Geography, because GOES, I believe, GOES 17, which is going to be replaced soon because it's having sensor problems. One is because you got to remember satellites, especially geostationary satellites, are best when they focus on one location, because that's all they do. They're trying to stay over one location. And as you go to the edges, one, you're stretching the pixels and the map features, and you get bad parallax happening. And so for a satellite, they're most accurate when they're looking straight down, as you wherever their central location is. And if they haven't talked about parallax in your classes yet, especially in like instruments or stuff or anything that talks about satellite, major problems is, especially when, and it's seen a lot during hurricanes or typhoons, trying to get a satellite fix on the center location of a circulation can be difficult because the parallax from a satellite might make it seem like it's 50 miles north or south from where it actually is, just because you're looking at it at an angle. You hit the cloud top, the satellite thinks that might be the ground, and so it extrapolates the location to be straight down from that, when actually the angle should continue to the sea, then come back up. Yeah, and so it causes a lot of problems when it comes to actual fixing where things are located. Guam's not so bad because we're just about 14.5 degrees north from the equator, and so parallax is not actually that bad for us overall compared to like if you were in Oklahoma or any states further north where you're climbing closer to that 60 degree where it becomes, yeah, you're just kind of overshooting everything.
Great question. Any other questions? All right. Do you have anything more to add, Josh, or is it my turn?
Nothing in particular, unless they want to talk about how Guam is not underneath a weather service hurricane center, basically. We are the only ones that are actually listening to JTWC, which is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, which is actually operated by the US Navy. They're the ones that we use for most of our hurricane outlooks and predictions, even though Japan, JMA is the regional hurricane center for the area. So they're the ones that are, so Japan's responsible for actually naming the storms. They determine when it's allowed to get a name. But for the most part, we follow JTWC when it comes to forecast tracks and what its current strength is probably at.
I will just say that something that we ran into that I know I was told of for JTWC, just like the radar techs that that manage the radar in Guam, they also have a 1 to 2 year rotation period. And so your forecasters at JTWC will also run into that issue where some will have just been wrapping up the 2-year stint and they actually know everything, or not know everything, but know a lot more than someone who's just walked in the door last Tuesday. And so you kind of have to
Yeah.
juggle that occasionally when you're forecasting, which is
That's
fine.
yeah. That's why it's been about probably over 10 years now. That's why the tropical forecaster is actually a civilian forecaster that they hire. But yeah, it's still, the turnover is pretty quick there at sometimes. So there'd be times where you just learned everyone's name that you're on the call with, and then it'll change the next typhoon season.
I do have one more question.
Sure, we got one more
If anybody
question.
else- if anybody else has a question, feel free to ask it every day. I know I'm kind of asking a lot, but does anybody else have questions right now before I ask mine?
Zoom land. Hi, Elizabeth.
No. Okay, so I'll ask mine. So I'm also from RTC, so let's do weather officer and everything. So I was just gonna ask, and as you mentioned, kind of work with the Air Force and everything. So I'm just kind of curious how often you do work with the Air Force and what that kind of relationship is like.
Yeah, so let's see. The main thing I can think of right off the top of my head is, so the Air Force Anderson Base, Air Force Base has their own weather team. The most of the time when we have communications with them, it's just when the radar's down, because even though the Air Force fixes the radar, we still have the control system in our office. So we're the only ones that see all the alerts, the alarms, if the radar goes down or not. And I find it sometimes weird how their maintenance team doesn't talk with their own forecasts partners inside the Air Force, because they'll call us during routine maintenance going, why is the radar down? And we'll go, routine maintenance from your technicians, and they wouldn't know. I think it's gone better over the past few months. They've all had a powwow and talked it over and made sure there's a whole chain list of commands basically now. But that's the only time we really interact with the Air Force, unless there's special operations going on. Actually, I've interacted with the Navy a lot more. So back when the HMS Victoria, the carrier, pulled into Guam, part of the British task force that was joining the US task force to go through the South China Sea. That was a little bit of interaction. They just called to see what we saw on our radar and stuff like that, just to make sure they got safely harbor while their radar was down, because they were in docking positions. And then Navy also called us. So didn't know if you see on the news, but there's this guy who's in a rowboat who's traveling across the world. So he left California, was it last year? Yeah. He was supposed to go to Hong Kong, but he got kicked off track, and that he made a stop in Guam about almost a week ago now for repairs before he continues on to Asia, where he will then try to climb Mount Everest. And then continue on to the other tallest peaks in the different continents and climb those. But that's his large project. So the Navy actually called us to inform us that that was going on, and that if they ever needed weather updates to compare what they were seeing, that we would communicate with them. So yeah, there's a lot of different types of outreach collaborations that we do.
Any other questions? Anyone? I know there's been some chats, but I think they've been mostly about Scipio. Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone has any questions for Josh, he will be on the call for a little bit longer, I think. Feel free to hang
Yep,
out, Josh. Not gonna kick you away or anything like that.
Oh, no problem. I don't have work until about 11 hours, so
Oh, goodness.
I'm on the midnight shift tonight.
Oh, well, if you need to go to bed for the mids, we can let you go.
I've already been taking off and on naps all day.
Fair enough. So if anyone has any questions they think of later about how operations work in the weather service, he is the man to ask. But I think we'll transition to my resume prep, and everyone give like a round of applause for Josh. Great.
Claps to be compared to Scipio.
All right, so I'm going to share my resume because it's been sufficiently shredded by my mentor in Guam, Nick Slaughter, as well as a few other professors and faculty members at this point. And I don't mind if y'all see my stuff on here. So, bit of background well, I'll start by telling y'all about my time in Guam. So Josh was one of my mentors in Guam, as he's always been my mentor. Fun fact, the OWL website was built by him. So he's the guy who built the website that y'all log into and still use and issue your forecasts and write the discussions for. So it's really kind of fun how he built that website here while he was in school, and now he's the website focal for NWS Guam. So those skills that he learned here are still translated into skills that he's learned in the office. So even if you focus on something silly here, like anything, like website building, communication, forecasting, anything, those skills can translate into something that a focal point into the office, which is super cool.
That is so true. That is so true.
Like, I think, was it in your interview or at some point they asked you to show your personal website so that way you could show the websites that you had worked on as proof that you had done the website stuff?
Yes, I showed both the OWL website and my personal website. Just to show, yes, I know my way around HTML code and other stuff like that, that if they wanted me to become the focal point for the website, which was one of the reasons why I was hiring for my programming skills, because they needed someone to take over website duties. And so, yeah, that was a major part of my interview.
Looking for that niche, that sort of sweet spot that you can fit into is pretty great. April, you have a question. Go for it.
Could you show coursework that you did? Like I did HTML with Wayne Stewart's class, if applied statistical methods.
Did you catch that, Josh?
Yeah, so definitely underneath like skills, you could have a part on your resume that says skills, and you can have mention HTML, Python, R, and if the interviewer is really interested in that skills, they'll bring it up and you can add further detail where you learn stuff like that. Because I know the resume requirements, if you go to USA Jobs, mostly want volunteer and work experience, not really school, because that's covered by your transcript. But if you want skills that you learned in class to make sure that they're talked about as well, make sure underneath the skills in your resume, put that, and then try to bring that up when in your interview, because most people will ask you, do you have any questions for me or anything you want to bring up and talk about? So yeah.
Great question, though. Definitely a great question.
Cool, thanks.
So part of my time in Guam, as the intern in question, I learned how to do upper air forecasting. I did CLC training, which is the sort of background training modules that they do in the weather service. So they have training modules for literally anything everywhere. So you have to do like diversity training, you have DEI training, so diversity, equity, and inclusion training, you do upper air training, I did risk and crisis training, I did tropical training. You have to do hundreds of hours of these trainings if you're a full-fledged forecaster. For me, I just did it. I had to do some of them because it was mandated by the internship, but some of them are also just, I wanted to do them for fun and I had access to the account. And these certifications actually appear in my resume under my professional experience for Guam. I have it right here. CLC training for upper air, tropical meteorology, and risk communication. So if anyone ever asks in the weather service, do I already have these certificates? Are they valid? Right now I can say yes. And oops, I gotta get this out of the way. So that was part of my job. The other part was, like Josh said, they do projects. I did a project where I translated outreach material from English into different languages, such as Chamorro, Japanese, Korean, and Russian. Some of those are planned still, some of those are partially translated. And those have actually, if we go to this link right here, because they put them on their website, are now visible on their website. So this is something, a page that anybody in Guam or anyone going to Guam or in Micronesia or in the Marianas can open up, and they can see weather safety information in Chamorro and in Korean at the moment. So anyone can look at these graphics and they can see what they say, they can read them, they can understand them, and they can know how to stay safe in their weather situations, which is just amazing. The other benefit about these projects is you get to present this material. If you have enough work done on it, you can present at conferences such as National Weather Association Conference, the American Meteorological Society Conference, and those count as publications. And so that is another thing you can put on your resume to boost your resume, is that you have presented research material in a conference, and that will just make you stand out as just that much more of a stellar candidate for meteorology jobs in the Weather Service or outside. Because if you're going to grad school, if you're in the Weather Service, if you're in private sector, everyone goes to those conferences. Most people do presentations about it. Everyone's doing some variation of research. And so that's not to say you have to do research. You are not required to. If you don't want to do research, you don't have to do research. But it's a great way for networking and doing projects like this, where it's more of a social science project versus a hard science project, which is a distinction that you don't have to make. Can still get you that networking experience, can still get you that publication experience, can still get you that foot in the door to reach out, interact with people. Other duties I did is I ran their social media account for basically 2 months. I made graphics on Facebook. I covered heavy weather events. The one thing I didn't do, which some people did do, as other interns who are present and those you may know, I did not answer the phones because I'm not a degreed meteorologist yet, and I didn't think it was appropriate. That was just my personal decision, and the office respected that. Other interns may take phone calls where they're issuing forecasts over the phone. That's part of the customer service side of things. I just didn't. So that's just a me personal thing. I did help with forecasting, tropical storms, heavy rain events. I issued marine forecasts, I issued surf forecasts, I got some AWIPS experience. Getting my CAC was a little bit difficult, but that's a learning curve that's semi-unique to Guam. Interns, it's like a 50-50 chance if you're gonna get a CAC or not. That's a civilian access card. And so basically the computers require you to put a card into the system to log in. And so some interns got them and some didn't. In this past year, that was seemingly largely the case. Is some interns, you walked in, you got your card, it was no big deal. And some interns, they just didn't get them. Without that card, you can't do AWIPS, which is very tragic. That's different from in here, where these computers all have AWIPS and you can just test it out, but this AWIPS system doesn't go anywhere. So these products I was issuing flood warnings, I was issuing flash flood watches, that sort of thing. Text products were another thing I worked on. So the AFBs and TCP for a tropical cyclone product. I was working on all those things. So I kind of just wandered around and found projects to work on and made myself useful, which if you do that, your office will definitely notice. But some offices love the interactiveness and you walking up and just trying to find something to do, and some offices just absolutely don't. So, test your waters. So going to, well, before I move on, any questions about my time? Oh, and despite the fact that this is offered over the summer, and yes, you will be working a lot, I did have time for fun. I went to the beach, I went and hiked up a mountain, I saw hermit crabs on the beach, I ate at a bunch of different restaurants. There are so many restaurants on that island. You wouldn't think there's a lot of restaurants on that island because the island's about the same city size as like Norman, but literally there are a lot of restaurants on that island. And we went out, we had fun, we watched shows, we hung out. It was a lot of fun, but I also did my job. So it was a nice work-life balance. For 4th of July, they have a volleyball court on site. So I played volleyball with all the workers, and it was really funny to see that the older workers were actually better at volleyball than some of the younger workers. I got my butt handed to me. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
But,
And I think next week or in 2 weeks, we're inviting the Air Force to come over and we're going to have a little competition between the weather
please
service
send me
against the
videos.
weather team of the Air Force. And so, yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun.
Please send me videos of that. That's so funny.
Oh, will do.
So, and I'll share them with all y'all as well. Also, there are office dogs. There were several office dogs in the office. So some of our best forecasters are actually of the dog variety. So like Little Rock has Tarmac the weather cat. There was at this office when I was there were 3 dogs. I think one of them was a dog sitting doggo. So I don't think Icky's there anymore, sadly, but there are other dogs that were present at the office and they are adorable. I'm trying to think of other things, and there's a bunch of instrumentation on there too. My favorite being the fire stick, which is just 4 sticks that you stick on some rebar, and you have to go out there and stab it with an instrument to see how humid it is. It's really funny. I just find it very entertaining that that's like the scientific measurement for fire. But they have rain gauges, they have satellite dishes, they have a whole variety of instrumentation. I have an entire notebook filled with notes that the MIC tried to take away from me because she thought the notes were just so thorough about my time there that she wanted to keep it and put it in the library.
She still wants that.
She still wants my notebook. I didn't let her have it. It's mine, and I told her I would photocopy it. I haven't photocopied it, so I should eventually. But anyways, that was my time on Guam. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see all the photos. I'm not going to put photos in here because some of y'all have already seen them, but if you would like to see photos at a later point, feel free to let me know. That's also where I got my phone case. Phone case. But any questions about my time in Guam from my perspective as an intern, as someone who hopefully y'all will want to be at another location or potentially in Guam? All right, well then let's get into resume prep. So my mentor had the wonderful idea to put me through sort of a pseudo resume boot camp where he was like, we're going to make sure everything you meet the criteria for, because the last thing we want to do is have it kicked back for some technicality, because the resume rules this year are a little bit stricter than they were last year. So this is my resume. It's a very basic resume. I like a very basic resume, black and white. I don't like colors. I don't like boxes. I just like straight to the point. You know, anything else I deem is busy. You may have your own style of resume or someone who has made you a resume. That's fine. This is mine. I put my title, I put my address, I put my phone number, my email address, I put my OU email because it's better at filtering people. And there's built-in safeties with OU. I will change that once I'm outside of OU because you will lose OU email account access.
Yes, and also you gotta remember, Bruce, there was that one time you never heard things from Jenny because OU server went down for that 1 hour, so he sent that email to you.
Yes, so actually, fun fact, when she was setting up my interview, the MIC Genevieve Miller, we call her Jenny, she sent an email to set up my time for an interview, and at that moment, the OU internet server went down, so the email never arrived. So actually, I need to put a second email on here, so thank you for that, Josh. So that way, in case there is another internet issue like that, they can send to my private email, and that's on Google's servers, so that's beneficial. The 2 details I want to draw attention to that are significantly different. If you are a male, or if you're, in order to apply for this position, you have to be a US citizen or a national. You need to put if you are a US citizen or not on your resume. If you are a male, you need to put whether or not you're registered for selective service. Point blank, period. So those 2 details need to be on your resume and they need to be visible. And that is new as of this year. My next box down, I have my education. So I'm getting a Bachelor's of Science in Meteorology from the University of Oklahoma. I'm working on it, I promise, my GPA. It's not bad, but it could be better. And then I go through and I have 2 sections, one for current positions and one for professional experience. This is sort of to split up the jobs I hold now versus the jobs I've held. So the first position being a CAP student researcher, I put the time I've been employed. So in this case, I put October 2021 to present. It is a part-time position, 10 to 15 hours per week at $10 an hour. That is critical. You need to put what type of position it is, the hours it is per week, and the hourly rate you are making. If you don't put that information, you will get it kicked back, and it will be flagged. And unfortunately, I think Nolan had that happen to him this past week, or this past
Yeah,
recent
well,
week.
I put that my job was full-time, but not 40 hours a week. And actually, because of that, I ended up ineligible for a GS9 position, which I think I'm otherwise qualified for.
Yeah,
So,
with what you have, Nolan, I think you're definitely qualified for a GS9 position.
yeah, I know.
I have listed on here my supervisors as Dr. Daphne Ledoux and Dr. Cassandra Strawberry Williams. And I put a few bullet points as to what that job entails. So I conducted research of terms regarding emergency management and disaster preparedness, and I've compiled a list of emergency manager officials. If you notice, I don't have the supervisor contact information on here. That is because we can put at the bottom of my resume, you will notice that it says references available upon request. You can put that down there and it would save you some space. References are also included in the actual application process. There is a whole section for it. So that will not get you flagged. That is a quality of life update they introduced here. So you can save a little bit of space since a resume is supposed to only be a single page. If it's over a page, it's considered a CV. That's per Dr. Loria, who also reviewed my resume. Next bullet point down is professional experience.
Well, Bruce, I would like to add that
Sure.
that rule applies to most jobs, but the federal government. They
Oh, Nick
actually
said it was
want to
okay.
be yeah, I mean, that's fine. But if you go, if you read the USA Jobs resume rules, they actually want so much detail that they say they don't, if it goes over a page, that is totally fine. Let it keep going. Just make it as long as you want it to be, and it can be.
Hmm.
Also, something I want to point out, double check USA Jobs, because I think they also changed the requirements once again. But you know where you have the dates like June 2021 through
It
July
needs to be date
2021?
weeks, I think.
There,
The
there-
day.
yeah, there might be at least like a start date, like a fiscal, like June, let's
I
say
forgot about
5th
that.
through July 31st, something like that. I think that's a new rule that also was applied within the past month. They keep changing it because remember, most of the federal government uses a contractor, it's called enterprises services, and they keep changing. They're trying to get their act together about what the federal government actually wanted and trying to fulfill what they were actually supposed to do in the first place. And so they're playing catch up, and that's why all these requirements seem super strict. It's not the weather service that's applying it; it's the whole federal government itself putting pressure on the third-party vendor that we've been using to run these sites.
Fun fact, that third-party vendor is a pain in the butt to deal with if you're having payroll issues. Can confirm.
Especially if you live in Guam or on the other side of the international date line, because they don't get the concept that you're trying to call during the middle of the night here to make sure they're awake in the morning.
Yeah, I had many a times where I was calling at 2, 3 a.m. to talk to them about my paycheck just not working, which I'm sorry, if anyone else is also aware, 2, 3 a.m. is really late and I am exhausted. I don't know about y'all, but that's just me. So I need to put, that's a change I need to make actually, and I will go ahead and comment. I don't care if it's in this count.
Yeah, that is a thing on there. I just checked the website again.
Yep. So the next section where I have professional experience, that's where I have the internship for Pathways. If you notice, this one is a full-time 40 hours per week, GS4 annual, and then I put the salary on there. So even though it's a GS4 pay scale, you still need to put the salary. Even though it says full-time, you still need to put the hours. So they just want every single detail on there. I put all my little bullet points of things I did on there. Makes me look nice. And then the final one is my Oklahoma Mesonet job with the dates that I need to change on there as well. Part-time, 15, 20 hours a week at $11.50 an hour. So just as a brief recap, you need to put if you're a US citizen, you need to put if you're a man, whether or not you're in the selective service. And under jobs, you need to put your start date, day, month, year, full-time, part-time, hours you worked per week. And if it was salary, you need to put the salary. If it was a GS scale, you need to put the GS scale. Okay. And then finally, I just have skills where I have coding, HTML, Python, Java, Linux. I've done things with all those things. And then I have awards and scholarships. So this is for more academic things as well. And then at the bottom, I have references available upon request, which according to Nick and Ken, they both said that was okay. Mine is a page for the resume, and then I have a CV. I did have one question about that, Josh, and I was hoping you might be able to answer it. I had a person who couldn't be here tonight ask if including a cover letter, a CV, and other things would be a good idea for this application, or if that's just too much paperwork for it to be fair.
It can
you
be,
know?
it can be beneficial, but it's not a requirement. You do not need to send a CV or a cover letter. The very basic you need is the resume
Okay.
that follows this format. Yeah, that is also read through usajobs.gov because they always change exactly what's needed. Advice that some of us say, use their online resume builder uh, to fill out everything you need, then print that off. And if you don't like their automated format, because it is bland and it looks weird sometimes, just print that off, take it and remake it. But that's that way you're following the format that they want.
All right. So, and I will just say full disclosure for my interview, before we get into interview prep, Jenny, it was a Google Meets. I had to do a Google Meets where I sat at my computer. Fun fact, I thought it was a day later than it was supposed to be. So I had to speed run a shower in order to get ready for this interview, and it was a time. Hopefully with y'all's offices that you're applying to, most of them are on the other side of the date line. So therefore you don't have that issue of things being a day earlier or a day later than you think. But she had my resume printed out, held in her hand, and she went through the entire thing with me. She wanted me to explain every detail. She wanted me to be thorough. She wanted to hear what I had to say because she knew as an interviewer that what I put on this piece of paper, it reads to her one way, it means something else to me. So I put on here my coding languages are HTML, Python 3, JavaScript, Linux. She asked, well, okay, you put these coding languages, how proficient are you? And I said, well, I'm good with HTML, I'm good with Python, JavaScript, and Linux. I've seen them before. I know what they look like. If I needed to do things with them, I would probably need to read a book. And so there was various levels of skill. So some interviewers will get that deep into your resume, especially if they're looking for something specific. So another thing that she asked me about was I have a minor in communication. And so I put that I was pursuing a minor of communication on my resume. I've taken it off here. I need to put it back. And she straight up asked me what I wanted to do with that minor. So just like Josh got asked about his websites, I got asked about communication. So even if it's a small bullet point that you're like, oh, no one will care about this, it's okay to put it on there. Another piece of advice that I've heard, if you have held jobs in high school and jobs in college, if you have held enough jobs in college to where you can cut off those high school jobs, probably a smart idea to do so. If you have not, that's okay to put them on there, but just note that some of those people who you worked for a year, 2, 3 years ago at this point will not be the best references to your character as you are now. So for references, make sure they are people you interact with on daily or weekly or people who know you as of recent. And be sure also to make sure that those are people that are going to provide you a good reference. You know, just because you see your Calc 2 professor 3 days a week for 16 weeks doesn't necessarily mean that your Calc 2 professor is going to be the best reference for you to have. So make sure you sit down and genuinely think, will this person have nice things to say about me? Will they be an efficient, beneficial reference? Or will they be the worst reference? The worst thing a reference can say was, yeah, they were in my class, or yeah, they were at work, they got the job done, and that's it. If that's all that that person can say about you, then you don't want them as a reference. That's about as worse as you can get because that means you had no impact. But if you have someone who's like, you know what, they came in every day, they had a great attitude, they got their job done, when they were struggling, they communicated it, when they needed extra help or needed extra space, they communicated it, that's the type of reference you want. Now, we can have a totally other separate thing about making reference requests, but if you notice on here, I have 4 references technically because Daphne and Dr. Ledoux and Dr. Shiver Williams are both my supervisors for the one project. Then I have Genevieve Cruz Miller, who's the MIC of NWS Guam. And then I have Cynthia Luttrell, who is Cindy for those who work in Mesonet. And so all four of them as supervisors are people that I could put down as reference material. And if I'm asked about for those reference material, I have that information to get them. If you want to put the information on there, feel free. You know, I put references available upon request. That is not mandated. If you want to put the reference material on there, that is totally fine too. I just did it because I was trying to save space. So are there any questions, comments, concerns, anything that y'all would like to talk about on Zoom or in person?
I do have a question. I'm not sure if it's specific to like the government, what resume, but is the GPA normally required for if you're applying for a government position?
I'm gonna say for pathway, I've only ever applied pathways. I'm going to say yes for pathways. Josh, could you elaborate for more than that?
I did put my GPA on there. I think, I'm not sure if it is a requirement, but I do know, and this was a good example for me. When I applied for Guam, they were bidding it as a 5 through 9 position. I put my GPA, that way I could show that I am qualified if they hire me to make me a GS7 instead of a GS5. And because of that, I was hired as a GS7. I got to skip a grade level when I came in. Unlike my other coworkers that were hired around the same time I was, they were all made 5s. And so I start out just a little bit higher pay than them and will quickly rise to the ranks just a tad faster than they do.
And then another thing I will say, in order to apply for pathways, your GPA needs to be above a 2. So a 2.0 even, and it's on a 4-point scale. So it's from a 2 to a 4. So if you do not have a 2.0 at least GPA, which as members of the School of Meteorology, you're required to maintain a 2.5 each semester. So that shouldn't be an issue. But if you do not have a 2.0, unfortunately, your pathways application will be rejected, sadly. So that will be present on your transcript, but for general resumes, if you weren't necessarily applying for a federal position, I will say putting your GPA on there, if it's around or about a 3 or higher, typically that's good because that shows it's a pretty excellent GPA. If it's anything lower than that, I've heard from others too, you may not want to put that on there because it could be a little bit harmful. It's really just position specific though. So some jobs will like having a GPA, some jobs won't. So just go job by job.
Oh yeah, Bruce, I had a quick question about that. Should I, do I need to put like an official transcript from OU on there, or can the unofficial one work?
It needs to be an official transcript.
Okay, gotcha, thanks.
Yeah.
That is a required document. We got a question about reference letters. When I did this application last year, I did not have reference letters. I just had references. I believe there is a space for reference letters on the application, but they are not required. And given the quick turnaround of a week for this application, I think asking any professors or anything like that for a reference letter, if they don't have it already prepared, might be a little sketchy, to put it mildly. Nolan, Josh, would you agree with me on that, or would you have different?
Yeah, as far as I know, at least what I've heard from, we also are just in the middle of hiring people as well. Most people don't send reference letters. I mean, that all depends on, sometimes it's easier when you're in school to get reference letters compared to if you've been out of school for a couple of years. You're no longer in contact with certain teachers or former workers that if you worked during college. But yeah, they'll usually prefer, if they really want reference, to ask you for their contact information to actually talk to them directly.
Any other questions? Thank you, Josh. Anyone in here have any questions about this? I know it's kind of a lot of information, so I appreciate y'all hanging on for as long as you are. All right. If anyone needs resume help, if anyone wants me to look over their resume over the next week for this application, sorry for the quick turnaround. I don't know why it's so quick this year. Feel free to send it to me. I already got a couple I got to go through. I don't mind looking over your resume. I don't mind making sure you're meeting the right criteria. I don't mind. Like, I literally don't. I would rather y'all send it to me so that we can make sure it's good than y'all just keep it to yourselves and you get dinged for something. I am a big proponent of building the ladder behind me rather than taking it up. So I will help you to make sure your resume is okay.
And that's true. That's true for all of us, I believe, because we all want to make sure you succeed. We would all like to see you join us as colleagues and get that
Eventually.
experience.
I think we have a question in here. Nick, what's up?
I was gonna say there's a question for, that you could address for everybody, so who can actually apply for that?
So for Pathways, that's a great question. I should have said that. For Pathways, in order to apply, you need at least 2 years in school. So you need to be at least a sophomore. You need a GPA higher than a 2. And you need to be currently enrolled, I believe, at full-time. So you have to show full-time enrollment. And you cannot
I
be
think-
graduating in the spring or summer of 2022 for this cycle.
Yeah, and actually, I think if you read Pathways, there's some of them that I think limited it to half a year. I mean, not half a year, half-time enrollment, but double check each.
Some might have
position.
half-time enrollment.
Yeah,
I know also there's an option for Pathways. Some positions do hold that they can extend after the internship ends for a year during the school year and be part-time. That is listed on the applications, most of them. That is office specific. That is not mandated. So it is not set in stone that you are going to get this job over the summer and have the ability to work on it during the year. You have to talk to your MIC or your WCM or whoever's in charge of that in order to make sure that that is a thing you can do. Yes, April.
I did have one question. Could you apply if you are currently like at a half-time rate, but you plan on being at a full-time rate in the fall?
My guess is the automated system that reviews resumes would ding you and deem you ineligible.
yes, that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, that
With-
is.
Enterprises. So yeah, just read what it requires right now. Yeah, but yeah,
If you have any super detailed questions that maybe we aren't able to address, there is phone numbers for people to contact on Pathways that are listed. It might take a little bit of time for them to respond because everyone is calling that number or texting that or emailing or no,
Yes.
calling that number. There isn't an email. Or there might be. Last year, that person was really hard to reach by email, but they are very much capable and they will answer you and they will respond to you. It just might take them a little bit of time. And especially with this quick turnaround, it could be a little nerve-wracking. But one thing I will say is once you're through this process, this initial process of the resume and the application, and you move on into the interview and the paperwork process, there is someone that you will get assigned from HR that will hold your hand and make sure you are filling out literally every piece of paper correctly. And if they have any questions or concerns about that, they will have no problem in helping you do that. They want you to go at that point, you're going and they want to make sure that you have everything you can. Another thing I will say is that some of these positions are listed as virtual positions for Honolulu, Silver Springs, and I think one more. So there are positions in which you might be able to do virtual, and all of them I think say the option for virtual or in person is a thing. So just read each application, understand what you're applying for, and go from there. Any additional questions before I turn it over to Nolan? All right, well, thank you all so much, and I will turn it over to Nolan. Nolan, you should have screen sharing privileges. If you don't, I will fix that.
Okay, awesome. So we are going to make some assumptions here. The first assumption is that Bruce has done a fabulous job of preparing you with your resumes. Your resumes all look amazing. Oh my God. The enterprise services automated system says, woo, forwards you along. And now it's time for the real fun part. And when I say the real fun part, I would like to just specify, I love interviews. I think they're so fun. I know that probably puts me in the minority of people, but there is just something that about having to give the best answer you can and on a moment's notice that clicks to me. So for this, we can go a couple of ways, guys. I would be curious what you want to do. I can just go through kind of some of the stuff that I have lined up, or we can make it a little interactive and we can kind of have everyone practice live if anyone wants to volunteer. I know that sometimes doing that via Zoom sucks. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I've been watching the Michigan State basketball game. So like, I'm not here to pressure you guys, but if you do want some practice, I'm happy to, you know, put some of the questions or ideas that I have out in front of you guys, and anyone who wants to do some live practice, we can definitely do that. Kind of depends on what you'd all like. This is the part where I would maybe need like a couple of responses either in person or in the chat.
I think we're okay in person to not do the interactive and just see what you have. Zoomland can deduce their own though.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna pop along then. That is totally good with me. All right. So first, let's talk about myself, because myself is my favorite subject, and when you guys are interviewing, yourself is your favorite subject. So those of you who don't know me, I'm currently a grad student in the OUSOM. I'm a second-year master's student. Went to OU for my undergrad also, so I've been in Norman since 2016, which, you know, back when I was in OWL wasn't a really impressive thing to say, but is now starting to feel long ago. I previously worked 2 Pathways internships. So in 2019, I worked at the National Weather Service Lower Mississippi River Forecast Center. Here is a picture of me with different glasses, same smile. Back in 2019 at LMRFC, working the desk as the operational HAS that day. So this is something that Josh and Bruce haven't mentioned, because I don't think they maybe have as much experience with it. But river forecast centers are another great way to go with Pathways. They're always looking for hydrologists and hydrometeorologists, which they love people with meteorology, in meteorology backgrounds to apply, because this is really kind of bridging the gap between 2 different disciplines. If you guys are interested in applying to the RFC Pathways, which usually opens up like a week later than the WFO one.
It is actually open right now. So there's the
Yeah,
hydro.
they all
one
came at the
right now.
same time. Yeah, they all came
Sorry.
at the same time. There's no staggering.
Oh, okay. Wow. Hey, what do
And
you mean?
Slidell and Tulsa both have a spot.
What do you mean same shirt, Robbie? I'm wearing a green shirt. Is Robbie colorblind? I read green.
No,
Red, green
I've seen
colorblind
you
is
wear
very
that.
common. What?
I've seen you wear that shirt like 4 times in the last year. I'm just saying, like, it's a valid shirt though. So
I mean, it's an OU. I mean, actually, I wear my white OU polo now more nowadays because, well, I did. Now I'm gonna have to burn my white one because that was the Lincoln Riley one. It's tough, but that's how it goes.
I have the same shirt though, so I'm not making fun of you. Trust me.
Okay.
Definitely is.
Yeah. Well, we'll deal with it. So in 2021, so last summer, I worked a different Pathways internship. This one is a little bit different than the one that Bruce and Peter and everyone else can talk about, because this was a fully remote Pathways internship. And I don't know if Eastern Region's going to do that again. Eastern Region might not know if Eastern Region's going to do that again. But I stayed here in Norman, logged in basically remotely, and because of the way the internship worked, I don't think anyone was thrilled with the format, but because of the way it worked, I really focused on project stuff. So I got to work on some cool projects that they really wanted done, and some that they didn't really want done, but were willing to support me in doing. That really kind of helped. And I also got the chance, I guess I should say, to help with operations. So that really helped me understand the different aspects of working in the Weather Service. So I'm now going through the same application process for a full-time job. I have decided that grad student life no longer fulfills me, and I will be moving on with my life. So the first 2 waves of NWS full-time postings actually closed. One of them closed about a month ago. One of them closed just a couple days ago. So kind of keep my fingers crossed on that one. Haven't heard directly back from any offices, but I heard from one of my references that they were contacted by an office. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed on that. So I know what you guys are going through. Believe me, it's stressful, but somehow we get through it. Okay. So fun number is 5. That's the number of NWS interviews I've done. I had 5 Pathways interviews across the 2 years that I really did applications. So if there's anybody in the world who knows what a Pathways interview looks like, it's probably me. For reference, NWS Detroit, the Arkansas Red River Forecast Center in Tulsa, the Lower Mississippi River Forecast Center, and then WFO Phoenix and Blacksburg. And also that 5 is the number of students that I did interview prep sessions with last year, and 4 of them ended up getting NWS jobs, and at least 2 of them are currently, Bruce is pointing at himself. Peter's probably somewhere in the chat right now typing up, hey, me too. If you add on myself, that's 5 out of 6. That's pretty good success rate. And the one who didn't get a job was interviewing against Bruce, so that barely counts. So I have some methods, and I think they really work. All right, let me check the chat real quick. I'm just assuming it's Peter. He goes. Okay. So the interview format, in the past, they were phone interviews. So basically you would get called, or you would call them at a number, and it was very weird to do an interview like just with your hand here, you know, doing like the phone style. I once had an interview where it was a phone interview and I was doing field work with the Oklahoma Mesonet that day. And the technician I was working with did not have us home in the time I told him we needed to be home by. So I did an NWS interview from the bed of a Oklahoma Mesonet pickup truck, and I did not get that job. Those 2 facts are probably related. Since the start of the pandemic, they seem to have shifted more towards using Google Meets. This is good. Being able to pick up your interviewer's body language is a good thing. You want every cue, whether or not they're liking or disliking your responses. And believe me, it's a lot easier to tell from this than it is from awkward silence over phone while driving down I-35. That's just how it goes. So I know Google Meets isn't ideal. It was Kirk, Robbie. I'm glad that you knew that. Google Meets isn't ideal, but it's a lot better than what they did in the past. And unfortunately, they can't fly you into Monterey for an in-person interview. That's just not how it works. Okay, calls usually last between 30 minutes and an hour. They'll generally tell you beforehand, or they'll tell you at the beginning of the interview. They only have X time slot before they have to move on to either another interview or to their lives. Interviewing panel I've usually found is 3 to 5 people. At WFO, it's usually the meteorologist in charge, the science and operations officer, the warning coordination meteorologist, and then 1 or 2 leads. That's how I've usually seen it. At RFCs, it's generally the same, although I have had 1 or 2 interviews that were just with 1 person, which I don't think is very common. They're going to ask you some questions at the beginning. You're going to introduce yourselves, learn some stuff. Then they have a list of prepared questions that they're going to ask you. They might go off track and ask some, questions that they're interested in. And then they're going to ask for questions from you at the end. So that's kind of your typical format. And it's one of those things where I'm not telling you should be filibustering to kind of fill up your time. But in my interview with Phoenix last year, I was way too conscious of not taking too much of their time. And we had an hour for the interview slot. And after 40 minutes, we were done. And it was really, really, really awkward. So be cognizant of the time. You don't want, if they say they have 10 questions and you have 40 minutes, don't answer a question in 2 sentences. If they say they have 20 minutes and 10 questions, don't write the art of war in your response. Find that happy medium. It doesn't hurt to have a clock set up somewhere where you can kind of tell what's going on, but I wouldn't also obsess over the time. Okay, first things first, you're going to introduce yourself. This is something that you should prepare. I'd like to point out that I really like interviews because they're a chance to improvise and think on the fly and answer questions like that. Your introduction should not be that. And the good news for people who don't like to improvise and think on the fly, a lot of these questions can be anticipated, and a lot of being a good interviewer is having anticipated questions and having at least your talking points ready. I don't know if you want to necessarily have a practiced full response for every question, but you should have talking points that are ready. But this one, if you want to have a practiced response, that's probably a good thing. Make sure it introduces you both as a meteorologist and as a person. So I like to say, hi, my name's Nolan. I'm currently a master's student at the University of Oklahoma. I originally grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So introducing myself as a meteorologist and as a person. Talk about your interests. This is something that applies to both meteorology and as a person. So as a forecaster, I'm interested in, obviously I do boundary layer research. So I'm interested in boundary layer meteorology, mesoscale analysis, and hydrometeorology. So those are some of my interests. Would not saying that you can't be interested in tornadoes, but list an interest, at least in addition to tornadoes. Don't just list that you're into tornadoes. They're going to get that a lot. You want to stick out. And then my interest as a person, I always tell them that I'm on a life mission to visit every U.S. national park. Only 46 to go.
Hey, Sam.
Cool experiences. That applies again for both. I, had the opportunity to work at the Oklahoma Mesonet for several years. I had the opportunity to be on a field project when I was an undergrad with Taurus. Cool experiences in life. I wouldn't overdo it on that, but maybe something that kind of tells a little bit about who you are now and how that shaped you. And then talk about what you do now. And this is something that I put in because sometimes I don't talk about what I do as a grad student. I just mentioned that I am a grad student and I don't talk about my research. And I think I'm doing myself a disservice there. Talk about what you do now. Are you a Mesonet operator? Are you an OWL shift leader? Are you somebody who's researching with Dr. Martin? Stuff like that. Everybody has something. And if you don't have something, you can make something up. Talk about how you are passionate about the student forecasting organization on OU's campus, because you're all here right now. So you're all at least somewhat passionate about it. You're not even lying. And then also when you're introducing yourself, you want to have that origin story. Everybody wants to have it, but be original. Okay, so they're going to be interviewing somewhere between 3 and a dozen other people. And at least half of them are going to talk about how they first got into weather when they were 6 because a storm came through their neighborhood and knocked a tree down in their front yard. Don't be that person. Find something more interesting. Even if that is true, find a way to connect it in a more interesting way. For me, I first got into meteorology because I liked numbers as a kid, and the Weather Channel had the most numbers, to be perfectly honest. But what I like to tell in my origin story is that when I was in high school, I was on the school news show, and that when we had a big weather event coming up, a big winter weather event in Grand Rapids, people would expect me to go on the news show and predict whether or not there would be a snow day. So I always say that my introduction to shift work came from those days, waking up at 3:30 a.m. to read the Grand Rapids area forecast discussion and try to figure out what that meant for whether we would have a snow day or not. That's a relatable story. It's something they're not going to hear somewhere else, and it helps you stick out, and it shows your passion. So find something that really hits those sweet spots without being cliche. This also gives you a chance, the introduction, it gives you a chance to establish the tone of the interview. I had 2 interviews last year. One, I saw everybody smiling and nodding when I told that story about the shift work. The other, I saw people looking at me intently. Okay, smiling and nodding. We're going to have a conversational interview. They want to see who you are as a person. They want to establish a connection. That's what that's what you're looking to do. If you feel that it's a conversational type tone, you're looking to establish a connection with them. This gives you a chance to improvise, because you don't want to stick to prepared talking points if you're having a conversation. People know when you're just making, or when you're trying to ram things into a conversation, but if you can kind of work stuff in, improvise, establish that connection, you're going to do well. I do really well with these types of interviews, and I'm working at getting better with these types of interviews. The one where they didn't smile, the formal interview. Here, they're looking for your qualifications. They aren't really looking to see if you fit in the best with the office. They want to know, are you the best candidate? And I'm not going to comment on which one's better. I think they both have their pros and cons. But if you sense that your interviewers are being more formal or a bit more, I'm trying to think of what another word for formal is there's a word. Whatever it is. If it's more formal, I would stick more towards your prepared talking points, talk about your qualifications, and try to establish that you're the best candidate. Maybe that you don't fit in the best, but you're the best candidate and the best qualified. This is kind of a thing that you want to establish early, because I have had interviews that went like this, where I was trying to make it go like this, and they were a disaster. Questions. Anyone else hear that in a Dwight Schrute voice? Because I felt like I said it in a Dwight Schrute voice accidentally. The
Yeah.
best thing you can do to prepare for the questions that they are going to ask you is to practice answering questions. Call your parents, have your significant other to ask your cat to ask you questions, whatever works. Because somebody who's been through a job interview before and they don't know your specific NWS specific questions, but they know interview specific questions. Why do you want to work at this office? There are a lot of people know what types of questions you should expect, and they can help you practice them, and that'll help you not only set your talking points, but focus them in a way that they're going to come out and be articulated well. These are some really common ones that I've heard during multiple interviews. So if nothing else, I would screenshot this slide, because if I've heard them in multiple interviews, that means they're on a list somewhere, especially these last two. But also it's important to know why do you want to work at this office? Like, why are you applying to NWS Grand Junction, Colorado? Is it because you like skiing? And maybe I wouldn't just say because you like skiing, but you can say that you love the mountains and you think mountain and boundary layer meteorology out there are interesting. You think it presents a fun topographical challenge. And also you and your fiance are trying to go to every national park, something like that. Or you applied to Norman because you like tornadoes. We'll find a way to make that sound better, but that's at least your foundation to why you want to work there. Bruce, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So one thing I want to add a question onto here that is common, because Caitlin actually got this question. This is Caitlin Edelmeyer. She is unfortunately not here tonight. She was explicitly asked, what is DEI and what does it mean to you? That is a question that she got asked, and she was asked by her office, and it was not an uncommon question to be asked by offices. So I would be very, very, I would make sure that that's one of the questions you might prepare, because how you answer that question could also set a different type of time.
That's, excuse me, I just choked on my own water. Don't do that during an interview. That might not help. That's good information. And that's also something that I don't know that that's popped up during an NWS interview for me before, but I've had that for scholarships or other types of internships. And that's one you definitely want to have a response for. So that's a really good thing to mention, Bruce. Also, this was supposed to be, okay. Bruce, how do you handle things when you're asked in an interview a question and you don't immediately know how to answer? Okay, so what Bruce did right there
is not what you're supposed to do.
No, I mean, you made a signal that acknowledged you were considering the question, and you bought yourself some time to think. What I always do is I rephrase the question. So I would say to that question, what would you do if you were trying to figure out, if you were trying to figure out how to answer a question that you don't know how to answer? So first thing I would do is, and you've just bought yourself 20 seconds. And if you don't think you can do that in 20 seconds, just say, hey, that's a good, tough question. Do you mind if I think about it for a moment before I answer? That's also a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
I think what I did last time for Guam, because I did one of those questions, was I asked them to rephrase the question. I was like, would you mind rephrasing the question so that I can better answer would you mind rephrasing the question so I can better answer it? And they were able to restructure their answer or restructure their question a little bit. And then I was able to buy that time to formulate answers. I think what I did, which is another method, although I like Nolan's methods a lot better.
Because when you're restating the question, you're showing engagement with them, and you're kind of you're putting through a show of making it seem like, oh, you want to give this the most considered answer possible, when really you're just scrambling to try to come up with something that's coherent. And again, that's where this just becomes the most fun game out there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So biggest weakness. This is my pet peeve. People who list strengths as a weakness. I'm too much of a perfectionist, or I work too hard, or stuff like that. People who take something that's good and they pretend that it's a weakness. If I'm an interviewer and I hear that, you've just been disqualified. I hate to break it to you, but I'm not an interviewer, so maybe there's somebody out there who's eating that up, but it's 2022. I don't think they are. Find something in your professional life that is an actual weakness, but don't make it something that's unfixable. You know, I have sleep apnea, so I'm constantly tired. That's not going to work because that's not something that's necessarily easily fixable. And that's just, you've told them something that might be a future job concern without a remedy. For me last year, what I said was that my biggest weakness was computer programming skills. And I said, you know, that's something that I really struggled with as an undergrad. And one of the biggest reasons why I felt like I needed to go back to grad school was to work on my programming skills. And so now I'm working on a thesis pretty much entirely within Python. And I think I've improved on that weakness a ton, but I'm looking forward to having the opportunity with the Pathways this summer to work on a project and maybe continue improving those skills. And lo and behold, I walked myself right into a Python project all summer. So find something that is a weakness, but something that you can work on and show how you have worked on it or how you plan to. Way better answer than the person out there who says they drive themselves too hard or they can't make themselves accept good enough. Because I've heard people try that before. It just doesn't seem sincere.
Yeah, and also that can raise red flags that you might not be a team player. You might not be able to work well with your coworkers to make sure that the responsibilities are handled evenly and that you don't fall behind in a warning situation or at least a communication situation.
I know for me last year, for when I got asked this question of what is a weakness that you have. I answered it in, while I am aware of how tropical meteorology is communicated, I am really unaware of the operational side of things, and I would love the opportunity to sit there and truly understand how the forecaster makes their decisions and communicates it to the public, because I see what y'all say out in the public, but I don't see what you say in the background. And so that's one way of which I understand half the situation, but not the other half, and that is an opportunity for them to teach me it. And then I spent the entire summer doing social media for them and understanding how that process worked.
That's brilliant and exactly how I would go about it. Find something that you can work on, or that maybe even they could help you work on. You know, their job isn't necessarily to rehabilitate your problems in life, but something that's professionally workable. And in that case, you might run into a bit of a problem in that they could go, well, nobody's had experience looking at tropical stuff operationally because this is a student internship. But I think if you answer it with the panache that Bruce did, they're going to eat that up. So that's brilliant. Okay, asking questions. This is the most important part of the interview. Anybody who's telling you otherwise is lying. They've asked you questions, you've given answers, you've maybe set yourself apart, you've maybe not set yourself apart, but where they're going to learn the most about you is the kind of questions you have for them. And you will get the chance to ask questions at the end, and there will be people who you interview against who will say, no, I don't think I have any questions. You know, this has been a great opportunity to get to talk with you, and you have a chance to move ahead of them because you're going to show that you are interested in what happens, and you're going to show that you have initiative. Have at least 3 questions ready to go. I would say maybe even have 5 questions that you can cycle through, ready to ask at the end of the interview. 1 or 2 can be about the duties required of a Pathways student. I wouldn't ask all of them about that. Stuff like relocating, stuff that is going to affect how your life will be affected by the Pathways. You know, you can ask them what sort of stuff have Pathway students done in the past here? Have Pathway students found it easy to find housing here in North Webster, Indiana, a small town that doesn't have a whole lot of services? Stuff like that. I wouldn't word it like that, but you know, a couple of questions about stuff that affects you, but also ask some questions about what they're looking for. You know, what have Pathway students done in the past? what are you hoping that your pathway student can do this summer? Are you looking for someone who's going to do more project-based stuff, or are you looking for someone to help operationally? Yeah, those are some good things to think about, and make sure you get the info you need out of the job. So everybody is in a different spot. For me, what I was really curious about last year was, are you guys looking for someone that you can hire full-time? Spoiler alert, turns out they are.
This is also where researching the office ahead of time, if you have an interview, becomes critical. Because for instance, last year, I asked, so what's it like dealing with the issues of forecasting internationally, since you were forecasting not only for the United States, but for other countries? And then she walked me through the entire, like the MIC walked me through the entire forecast issues that she's run into in the past, where she's forecast for Micronesia. So knowing specifically that office and what they forecast, how they forecast, their skills that they're like what they do, maybe you can craft a question out of that. Maybe you can pull a resource out of that. I mean, heck, I looked at the Wikipedia page of Guam to ask about like geography stuff if I had to. Like I was a bit thorough, but there are examples here that you can totally pull from.
Yeah, I did something similar. I asked, I said that one of the things I was really interested in, those who were previously in my OWL shift know my favorite weather event of all time, hashtag Big Thompson. I asked, how do the Appalachian Mountains and the ridgeline convection, how does that affect your area's vulnerability to fast I don't know what I said exactly, but how are you impacted topographically with flash flooding? Do you guys have a lot of fast acting flash floods because of rain in mountainous areas? And what I didn't know, I hadn't looked it up, but I probably should have, was that they had a really famous flood in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, a couple of years prior, wiped out a golf course, whole thing. So they were very excited to walk me through what had happened there. And they were like, yeah, this is something that we've had to deal with before. So finding a way to craft the question to the office also is a good idea. And I'm glad Bruce brought that up. I'm going to take a quick second here. I'm almost done, but I want to direct everyone's attention to Scipio because he's having a dream. Oh, he's no longer having a dream. Okay, so asking the questions is critical. Like I hate to inflate his ego because it doesn't need any inflating. But the most brilliant interview thing I ever heard was this question up here. How do you see the role of the forecaster evolving over time? I got asked that by NWS Phoenix last year. I had a really early interview with them. And I ended up getting that question again with Blacksburg. So that must have been on their list last year. I don't know if it will be again this year, but I said, I didn't really know how to answer that one. And I kind of went with an answer that sounded impressive, but I wasn't really thrilled with it in hindsight because I talked about, increased machine learning and an emphasis towards communication and interpreting ensemble and machine learning output. I didn't really love my answer the more I was thinking about it, especially after a severe weather event happened that what machine or numerical weather prediction really missed. But the moral of the story is I was still stewing over that question a week later when I talked with Peter. I guess he didn't get asked that by NWS Missoula. So when they asked him for questions, he asked them, how do you see the role of the forecaster evolving over time? And I really hate to inflate his ego, but that's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard someone do during an interview. Because that's the kind of question that they're like, oh, this guy's forward thinking. And I'm not even going to look at the chat because I hate the fact that I had to inflate his ego. Last thing I want to talk about is waiting. Unfortunately, you may end up waiting a long time to hear back. Last year, I was lucky. Blacksburg got back to me immediately. I think I might have been the first person in the whole system to get a job offer. I had one, like, no joke, within a couple of weeks of applications closing. I had an interview really fast and they turned around and pretty much offered me a job the next week. That is not very common. It's pretty common not to hear back for days or weeks, or even I had an interview with LMRFC in March and they offered me the job like June 1st. A summer internship, they offered me a job June 1st. So you may be waiting a long time. And the thing is if you don't get the job, you might never hear back. And that is a thing that sucks to say, but you can drive yourself nuts. And I'm doing it right now, sitting around and waiting to see if you get an interview and waiting to hear back from those interviews. But you have to maintain some perspective and maintain some patience and try not to go nuts. Because it's not good. I know firsthand that it's not good for your mental health. Just sit there and wait and find out. And I know firsthand how difficult it is because I'm right now limiting myself to only checking my email once per hour. So I just want you guys to know more than anything. I know what you're going through, and I know that it sucks, but that's how the federal government works. And I wish I had better news, but I don't. And
It's
that's
also, sorry, just from the waiting thing. It is totally okay to vent to your friends about waiting. Like if you want to be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed about this, do it. Don't keep it bottled up, let it out, let it be known. If they don't want to talk to you about it and they're like, hey, I don't want to hear this anymore, respect that. But like, don't be afraid to like vocalize the fact that you're sick of waiting. Because if you don't vocalize it, you just let it sit there and you drive yourself insane, then not only is it bad for your mental health, but then like you could even stress yourself out to where it hurts yourself physically. So like for me last year, I was sitting there and I was texting Josh. I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared. And he was like, Bruce, you're fine. I was like, he's like, Bruce, stop, you're fine. And it was a lot of that.
I'm doing that to Elizabeth right now. I'm like I said, one of my references said she got contacted by an NWS office on Friday, and I haven't heard back from them. And I know it's only Tuesday, and it was a long weekend. And I don't think I'm giving much away when I say that that office is being impacted by active weather in this week. Which again, I don't think I'm giving away much when I say that because that's every office in the country outside of like Honolulu. But
And Guam, we're doing nothing at the moment.
yeah, it's not Guam. Yeah, I will say that. But I think I'm driving Elizabeth nuts because I'm like, why haven't they gotten in touch with me? What's going on here? I'm starting to get nervous. Apparently, I didn't put the hours correctly, so now that might cost me $10,000. Awesome.
I will also put on here, last year I did this and it was a fun little interactive thing. If you have a LinkedIn profile, they will look you up on LinkedIn and you will see when they poke your profile because LinkedIn has that feature. And so before I knew I'd been selected, actually had NWS Guam pop up on my LinkedIn. So like they poked me and I was like, oh, I'm being poked by the federal government. I hate that. And then like 3 days later was when they announced the job posting. So if you get interviewed, that is a kind of secret way to like see if anyone's looking at you, is to see who's interacting with your profile, which is kind of cool.
Had never thought of that, but I guess that's true. Yeah, I'm just finishing up by saying if you guys want to do like a more intensive interview prep, Bruce and Peter, I sat them down in a Zoom for half an hour and I drilled them on questions. I'm happy to do that. I found it really fun. I found it also fantastic practice for myself because my interview with Phoenix the week before I talked to Bruce and Peter was just a dumpster fire of terrible Nolan performance. And the one with Blacksburg a week later, I thought went really well. So it's good. It's mutually beneficial. You can email me at that address. You can DM me on Twitter. I'll probably never look at it. But to be honest, I can't look at Twitter much these days. Robbie's always in my mentions. He's kind of become a Nolan Meister reply guy.
That's an honor. You should be thankful that I'm mad you didn't reply to my NAM tweet. What the heck?
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. You sent it. When did you tweet it this morning? I was
It was around lunchtime because I was bored. So.
Oh, okay. I was taking my parents to the airport. And I
Wait.
saw it. Yeah, I saw it when I was dropping them off, and then I never got back to it. I'm sorry.
Wait,
You're
when?
You don't
excused,
have
you're
to give them
excused.
attention. You know that.
When?
Drake
Nolan
told me
has a
to-
Drake
TikTok?
told me to do that, by the way. That was Drake's idea.
Absolutely not.
What did you just say, Bruce?
I was there. I can confirm.
Bruce, what did you just say?
Well, Gwen said, I see your TikToks, I think. And so I was like, I thought Nolan wouldn't have a TikTok.
Oh
Maybe
God,
it's someone else. Maybe
I
it's
think you're
someone
thinking
else.
of Tyler.
You're thinking of Tyler.
I don't have a TikTok.
Nolan revealed.
I was like, what? Since when? That's news to me.
Tyler is just one office across from me, and we did lead an owl shift together last year. But
Does
My
anyone
My
have any
mistake. Sorry.
questions for
My
Nolan?
mistake.
I'm not offended being mistaken for him. I'm offended that you would think that I would have TikTok. Apparently because I don't have it, I don't know all the culture stuff. Elizabeth is still making fun of me for not knowing who some famous children's singer is. I know her name's like Joe something.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
My question is, I don't know if it's just me being me, but I feel like I don't want to say behind, but I almost feel behind because I don't have like research experience on my resume, and like I'm involved and I have like leadership experience, but I don't have like job experience or research experience. So I almost feel like I blend in, and I don't know how to make my resume stand out with just like owl and scan and the little things I've done, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. I just feel like I blend in when I don't want to.
I feel like that too.
Okay, so are you a sophomore or a junior?
I'm a sophomore.
Okay, so one big thing I'd say is don't worry about that feeling like you don't have a whole lot going on if you're just a sophomore. Honestly, no other sophomore out there does. Like, you're pretty much in the same spot. All of you guys have gone to school for 2 years in a pandemic. Nobody's getting the opportunities that they were beforehand. And I feel for you guys because that's a tough spot to be in, but it puts you on a level playing field with everyone else. And more than anything, honestly, the pathways positions generally get dominated by juniors and grad students. So if you're doing this as a sophomore, I would treat this as more an opportunity to put together your resume, understand how the application process works. And, that's what's most important, trying to see if you can get through to where your resume gets sent to offices. If that's where you've already succeeded. And I mean that sincerely. If you can get your resume to an office and pass the NWS automated system as a sophomore, you're doing better than most people. And honestly, if you can get it there and you get an interview is a perfect chance to stand out, because maybe if you don't have the most credentials, you lean on establishing that connection. You lean on showing that you're passionate instead of having a piece of paper tell them that you're passionate. And I think Bruce put some really good ways to make it look like you do more. I don't want to say make it look like you do more than you do, but Bruce has some really good methods for making your resume look the best it can. Another thing I'm going to say is that if you're part of OWL and you're part of SCAN, you're doing better than a lot of meteorology students from a lot of schools out there, because a student or forecasting organization where you can claim to have delivered an operational forecast for a radio station in Key West, there aren't very many undergrads, sophomore or junior, out in the country who can say that they're doing stuff like that. And you guys still do the Key West forecast? Has that been discontinued?
Do it.
We
Yeah, we
still
still do
do it. I
That's
do
good.
have a
I still
question.
do
How
it
do you
from time to
retrieve
time.
that to prove, like, for them to verify that you've done it?
You just say you did. Nobody's gonna inspect it that clearly.
Yeah, especially since if they really want to listen to it, they can download the app from the App Store and try to catch the right time to listen to it. But
And
yeah,
the
but I'll
secret
just
is,
add,
sorry.
oh, no, go ahead, Nolan.
I was gonna say the secret is I don't think Island 106.9's had it on the air for years.
Yeah, I
I
think
think,
so
I think
too.
Linda was just doing a solid by letting us think that, but I could never say that during OWL stuff. But now I'm not an OWL
I'm
member.
gonna prove you
I
wrong
will
because
tell
I've
you,
got family who lives down there who has confirmed that they've heard me on the air.
Oh,
So-
okay, perfect.
we just recently they like emailed us because a forecast was wrong or something, and then like some listener complained about it. So I think it's
They
actually on.
definitely still hear us because we
That's great to hear. Hate mail is the key to any successful forecaster.
Yeah, 'cause at least you're
But
doing something.
it's a good question, and it kind of touches on what everybody's feeling right now, which is that you don't feel like you have a resume that stands out. And I don't want to give you a false impression. Like if you were going against if they were going on resumes alone and they saw an OU sophomore resume versus what I put out last year, I'm probably going to be the one who gets that interview. But this is about more than just like the result. This is about learning how to do the process. And I'm going to be honest, it's not impossible. I know Matthew was a sophomore last year when he got an interview, and if you can put together the best resume possible and you can get yourself an interview, there's no reason why you can't like shoot for the moon.
Yeah, I think
I'll also-
I'm having like the anxiety of like, I want to stay here this summer, but I only want to stay here this summer if I have a job working towards meteorology and if I'm doing like research or something. So it's very much like this battle in my mind of like, do I stay here and go ahead and commit to sublet, or like what do I do? You know?
I totally understand, and I was there in your shoes not that long ago. It's a really stressful thing. I'm going through that right now. I don't know where I'm going to be living in like a few months after I defend my thesis. So it's just one of the occupational hazards of being a meteorologist. I would just, as much as you can, be open to, if you're applying to an opening in a NWS office somewhere, be open to living however you can. I lived in a hotel in Slidell, Louisiana. I stayed in a Homewood Suites for 6 weeks, which cost me just a butt ton of money. But if that's what you got to do, and you got to pay double rent, an NWS salary can help you cover double rent for a summer.
That
you'll
is
have to deal
a
with it.
key thing that needs to be covered. Pathways does not pay for your housing. They do not pay for your travel expenses or your housing. You will have to pay that expense yourself. So for me to go to Guam, I had to buy my own plane ticket, and luckily Josh had a wonderful bed for me to crash on. Otherwise, I would have had to pay my own rent. As Nolan has said, he had to live in a hotel for 6 weeks.
I had
and
a leaky
others have
ceiling.
Huh?
I had a leaky ceiling.
And he had a leaky ceiling and a hurricane hit while he was there. And so, you have to pay for your housing, you have to pay for your travel. It is a little brutal with that, but if you can't find housing, the office can sometimes help you find housing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick brought up a point I don't think we've actually said, but Pathways open today and it closes next Tuesday on March 1st. So you only have the 1 week period. That's it. So everything's got to get done this week.
That's what people were heading out. I want to quickly do that for.
So before everyone heads out, we wanted to bring that up. Any other questions for everybody? Anybody? And if anyone needs their contact info and they didn't get a picture of it or anything like that, I do have both these gentlemen's contact infos, and I can, with their permission, send y'all their ways as best I can.
Yeah,
I just sold
contact
Peter
me
my
anytime.
phone number for $10, so that's the going
Oh,
rate.
nice.
Yeah, I guess I could mention my personal email. You can find it on my website at jshank.com. If you need help spelling that, ask Bruce. But yeah, you can find my personal email at the bottom of that. And then yeah, he can also give you my NOAA email as well, if need be.
And finally, for resumes and for interview prep, do not be afraid to ask others for help if you want it. Like even as much as like if you want to take to Twitter and be like, you know what, I'm struggling with this Pathways application. Does anyone help? Whether Twitter has people who will come out the woodwork and be like, Pathways, you say, and they will help you on the fly. Like they are, this application is well known. People know how to navigate it, and there are so many people in this world who want to help you make sure you succeed. And I think that's very important for y'all to know is that y'all aren't alone. You have a support system, and they all want to make sure you get that job and be the best forecaster you possibly can. If there are no more questions, then I think we should give Nolan and Josh one final round of applause. Whatever.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And then we will transition into our own forecasts because we have to write a discussion of Facebook and a Key West. I handled the point
That guy-
forecasting while y'all were
Have a good
talking.
night.
So good night, Nolan and Josh. If you want to hang out, feel free. If not, feel free to leave as well.
Oh, I think I'll stay just for a little bit. I mean, it's been a while
Alright.
since I've been part of one of these.
Of course, no one's
And-
already coming.
But do not make me write AFD. I have to do that tonight anyway, so I am not doing that again.
Okay, you will not be writing our AFD. We have a track record right now of writing like 700, 800 word AFDs at the moment because there have been so many moving parts. So you will not be writing this AFD. It will probably end up being either myself, Nick, or Grant, or anyone who wants to write it with all of us talking.
I was about to say, I don't know if it
So,
could be me
bye,
tonight. I'm gonna have to
Emily.
go and finish the stats lab, unfortunately.
All right.
So,
Well, if everyone,
yeah.
if people have to head out, feel free to head out.
Oh, my
Did any of
condolences.
y'all in person take the bus? Okay, so everyone drove, no one's waiting for the bus schedule. Okay, cool, because last time I made people stay over, they missed the bus, and I was kind of sad I had to give rides, which I don't mind doing, but I felt bad about. All right, so,
Wanna go and shift over, like, read the discussion real quick?
yes, I actually have it all pulled up and ready to go.
Okay, as much as I would love to stay in forecast, I've got a personal obligation at 9, so
You're
You're
looking forward
good.
to see what you guys can come up with, and stay warm the next couple days, and try not to make your Zooms crash.
Fair enough.
Alright.
I'm sweating down here
Yeah.
in Guam. It's no windy
Well,
cold.
We have
I want to
tomorrow-
go back to my island, Josh. It's so cold here. I hate it. So angry.
What was the high today? 31?
It was at midnight. It was 6:62 at midnight.
Okay. Okay.
And then it
Besides
crashed.
the political front,
Yeah,
yeah.
it hit like 28, 29 for most of the day. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
And now it's back down to 10.
What?
It's colder
What
than it was
is a
this
cold
morning.
front?
Or no. It's 23 and feels like 10. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm about to go outside, so I don't like to look at the temperature because that's not what I feel when I go outside.
Yeah, Josh, for context, we are currently under a winter weather advisory and we have a winter storm warning to
Ooh.
our southeast. And it is for
Yeah.
sleet and ice. So we
We
have
also
a
have-
very fun forecast in store for us.
And it was 70 degrees yesterday.
Mhm.
All
So
right.
you're saying, what is this cold front you keep talking about?
It was a
I
cold
don't
front
know what those are.
It dropped us 40 degrees. Like no
In
joke.
an hour.
In an hour, it
No
dropped us
less,
40
yeah.
degrees. If you could name a blue northerner front, it was that.
Oh my god, it was one of the most intense
Yeah.
fronts.
Okay,
I think.
so as per normal, we are going to start by reading the owl forecast discussion written by Monday night. Oh, let me stop the recording. We don't need to keep doing that.
right.
Oh, no, that's not the right button.